Death Club.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Danny here, and today I'm talking to you about Distant Sky. So, Distant Sky is written by In-Won Yoon, of course from Blade of the Phantom Master and plenty of other series that we've talked about. And it is drawn by Sun-hee Kim, which I knew the name was familiar. Surprisingly, this is the artist for Westwood Vibrato, and that was the shoujo-like series. And I say surprising because the art style here is something else. This is also the final series in this Super String universe on the timeline. We're finally here through this crazy journey with all these different series that are translated. Anyways, started in, I think, 2014, currently ongoing. However, there was a 6-year gap in between season 3 and 4 of this series. Now, originally, I was going to read this right after Terror Man because it was just one of the first ones I grabbed up that I found translations for. And as soon as I started reading it, the very first chapter gave me a spoiler. And I was like, whoa, a certain character shows up. And it's something I wasn't expecting. And that's when I thought, okay, let me pump the brakes. We're going to come back around. Let's just go through the timeline in order just so we don't miss anything. And then when I finally came back to this series, reading it again, a lot of things weren't really adding up. And then looking at what I was reading, I'm reading the newest chapters of this. And then I remembered, oh wait, I did find this on the Webtoon app. This one's officially translated. Let's go and hop in. And good thing I did because the first 3 seasons is incredible. Let's get right into this. So it stars our main character whose name we don't get revealed until the end, which is Han-yul. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. So we see Han-yul wake up, it's pitch black, he has no idea what's going on, and we're stumbling upon this dark world. There is no light whatsoever, only has a phone that's critical in the battery life, so he doesn't have much time to dilly-dally as he's exploring this ruined city that is in Korea where he's from, trying to figure out exactly what's going on. And then upon his travels, he stumbles upon a girl named Hae-yul. She has trust issues, is very cold towards him. At the end of the day, he just wants answers as to what's going on. And of course, she doesn't trust him because he says he just woke up. The last thing he remembers was him dozing off in class. And she says that's impossible. We've been down here for over 2 months. As things happen, they've come to agreement to travel with each other and protect each other from this crazy world, as we see people that are insane. We don't know if they're infected with something, have they gone crazy, as well as animals that are roaming around like wild dogs that are starving because this place is in ruins. There's really no food to go around. So the first thing that really caught my eye that I loved about this series is the art. Really impressed with what we got going on in here. It fits the tone very well. You could feel the despair in the world based on the art style. It does a really fantastic job with that. And also bonus points for it because just like Terror Man, we are selective in colors here. It's mainly black and white with tints of blue to, represent that they're in total darkness. And then there's only a few things that are in color, like Yul's jacket is red, and so we have that in color. And then eventually we are met with another character that is part of the story in a way, and it's none other than our boy Jin-woo Min, aka Terror Man himself. That's crazy. That's the character that I saw from season 4, and I was like, oh, I didn't know we were doing this already. I thought we were having our individual series, and then there was going to be a crossover thing. Okay. So it was cool to see him. He's a character that really plays in the distance, and I didn't cross-reference. I probably should have, but if I had to guess, it's probably because of the time frame when this was made. This was 2014 when these chapters came out, and as far as I know, Terror Man did not end in 2014. So there is that overlap there with his character, much like when I talked about Revival Man and how he's in there, but it feels like that was before the time skip in Terror Man. This also feels like the same thing. But yeah, so we have the selective coloring, which works really well with just setting the tone of this series, and as well as the way the art is presented. So this is a webtoon, and what that means is it's designed to be read on the phone, on the mobile app. So it is comic strips. We have seen series that use that to its advantage. From series that we talk about on the Webtoon section, God of High School is a good example where we'll have these long strips of art that is just great to look at. And here, not only is it great to look at, but it represents the scale of exactly what's going on in the world and just the suspense. It does a fantastic job really keeping you invested in these chapters. I did not want to put this down when I started reading. Just the way you're scrolling through and then you're not sure exactly what's coming next with all of the crazy intense stuff that happens with our two characters here. In certain chapters, when things can get intense, there's just long strips of just black. And that's really fantastic because it makes you just want to keep scrolling and like, oh my gosh, when is this going to end? What is going on? It does a really fantastic job at keeping you invested. That is probably the best thing when it comes to this series, as well as the many other genres that Distant Sky will touch. You know, it's a lot of thriller, suspense, horror, post-apocalyptic. All of that meshes so well here. I got a lot of vibes early on from a film that's based off a book called The Road. I really love that movie. I think that's a really great movie. Just the subtle tones and the feeling of the desperation that our characters are going through. It's really felt here as well. And reading further and further into the story, getting into seasons 2 and 3, in the back of my mind, I was thinking, wow, you know, this really feels like something that Tsutomu Nihei would do. And of course, Tsutomu Nihei is the person that does Biomega, Apossums, Blam, all those series that I really enjoy. Great sci-fi suspense. And there's a lot of feelings of that here. I wouldn't be surprised if that mangaka was an inspiration into the works of this series, because we do get a lot of similar stuff. We have our male and female main characters that have a special bond with each other that we get more exploration and depth into. And then the long panning shots just to show you the scope and scale of this giant hole that this entire city in Korea got sucked into. And then all of the abstract sci-fi stuff that's going on, right? One thing I didn't mention is there's all these little bugs that are just there. And they just consume anything living. And so they're running away from that. All the crazy people that have lost their minds. They give off the type of feeling from I Am a Hero, where it's like they're infected with something that makes them go crazy, but they still retain a little bit of their memory that causes them to keep in a loop. And then, of course, we do see some that actually have dialogue, and it's like, oh no, they're crazy, but they haven't lost they've lost their minds, but they're still pretty aware of what's going on. So once I got that feeling, I was like, oh yeah, I'm really enjoying this series. And another thing that I just gave applaud for the way the writing was told was there's a moment where our characters get split off and you think, man, what's going on? Like, is this really the end for one of our characters? And then we're going through this journey with both of them. Oh, they're going to reunite right now. It's going to look great. As soon as you start putting the pieces together, we're rising up to the moment where we're going to get the reunion or the reveal of what's happening. It all starts to click immediately when you're reading. You're like, oh, wow, that was done really, really well. It was a little confusing at first, but I was going along with it. And then once I got the realization of exactly what was happening, I was really impressed. And of course, this being on the Webtoon app, you get to see comments, like the top 3 comments before you scroll to the next chapter. And just glancing at it, it's mainly not the best comment section I've seen, except later down the line. There's just a lot of complaints overall, but there's some good theories. And one of the theories that got disproven as you read further, but one of the theories at the time was like, oh, is there time distortion going on? It's like, oh, that would be interesting, because just the way the back and forth between our two main characters on their separate journeys, it made it feel like we were about to see something happen. And then it took a twist that is really good. And so we get to the end of season 3, which concludes, I would say, part 1 of Distant Sky. And then we move on to season 5 that just came out this year. Like I said, there was a 6-year gap between the two. Don't know the reason why there was a gap in between these seasons. Westwood Vibrato was done during this time skip, so maybe there's just other projects they wanted to do, or maybe that was what they thought, like, okay, we'll just end it here and then we'll work around more stuff involving the Superstring universe. Because as we start season 5, there's only 5 chapters out right now for that, and we're setting on a new journey with a new character, and we're exploring more of what's going on in the world. It feels like there's a huge time skip involved here, but we don't have any point of reference for that, though we do see some stuff connecting it to the previous seasons. So I'm very intrigued just to see what the answer is going to be between that. Another character shows up, which I'm fairly confident it's the character from Neolith Girl, or Cave Woman as it's also called. And I'm pretty sure that's the same character that also shows up in Terror Man. I haven't gone back into Terror Man to see that character's name specifically because, like I've mentioned before, Korean names, I have a hard time remembering them. Distant Sky, it was an enjoyable read the entire time. You're truly invested in the situation and the characters, and I can't wait to read more as we go along on this weekly release. And one thing I will say is going on the Ylab website, getting the timeline stuff, understanding how all of these are going to connect. They have a summary of what is happening in the universe that is going to cause these characters to come together. I would say it's probably a spoiler. It's at the end of season 3 where we get the reveal of what's really going to be happening. That is from the summary. So when all of these crazy sci-fi wild things were happening and our characters kept asking what's going on, in the back of my head I'm like, oh, well, this is the answer, right? So I would say that's probably a little spoilery. With this connecting to other webtoons from this universe, the question is, should I read those first before hopping into here? You don't have to read any of the other Superstring stories to enjoy this one. Like, one thing I noticed in the comments was nobody knew Min Jung-woo, and they just kept calling him the gas mask guy. And that's fair. You wouldn't expect a series like this to connect to something like that's high shonen, into something that's a horror suspense thriller type of thing. I will say, if you do read Terror Man, you're gonna understand certain things that are happening in the story. They talk about this weird phenomenon that's happening in Korea, and as it's not officially translated, we're still waiting for the remaining chapters of the series. We get teased as to some stuff that's going on in Terror Man that's important to the plot, especially with our main character Min Jung-woo. So that might have something to do here in Distant Sky. We do get a shot of just seeing what's going on in Korea, and that specific shot made me think this might be from Terror Man. That's interesting. I can't wait to finish Terror Man and see if that really is going to connect. While we wait for the remaining chapters of Terror Man to be translated and new chapters for Distant Sky, I'd say that's going to wrap us up here today. Highly recommend you guys check this one out. Would love to hear your thoughts if you have checked it out already, or if you're just starting in there, and you can send that to unversepodcast@gmail.com, as well as any questions or comments you might have. And then, of course, we'll talk about that on the next episode. And while we wait for that episode, you can follow us anywhere you go on social media at Unverse Podcast, and we'll let you know when the latest episodes drop. So thanks, guys, and we will catch you on the next one.